David, it's an absolute pleasure to be sat with you.
It's great
for
to be
this
here.
Easter Changes Everything series. This is a series of interviews where we talk about the story from death to life. The story of Easter is Jesus dying and rising again. And so we want to tell the story locally of how Jesus changes our story from death to life and changes everything. So briefly for me, just give me a backdrop. Who's David Williams? Give me some family life as well.
Good afternoon. It is afternoon, isn't it? I was going to say morning there. So I'm David, 40 years old. I know I don't look it. So a youth worker all my life, really, as long as I can remember. Married to my beautiful wife, Hannah. I've got a little boy called Jacob. He's coming up 3 in May. So, second lockdown birthday on its way. So we might be out by then, though. Grew up in a Christian home. Mum and dad Christian, still part of the church that I go to. Grew up in Newport, moved to Cardiff later on in life, live just up in Morganstown now, not too far away from here at all. As a kid, I always enjoyed serving and connecting and helping people. I always have. It's always been sort of part of my DNA, really. My mum and dad fostered young kids, kids with disabilities, and I'd always help out. And I can remember being 11 and 12-year-old and wanting just to kind of serve and give and help people. And I don't think at that point, I never thought it was being like helping people lesser than myself, because I never had that kind of high opinion of myself. But I always thought, you know what, there's some people out there that just need a bit more help than others and maybe don't have the tools to kind of progress in life. So as a kid, I was into sport. I was into kind of like being in and around people. But as I kind of got older, I very much felt like I wanted to get into some kind of work with people. So fast forward years and years and years, I started doing youth work at 16, and I'm still doing youth work now, and that's my job in Torvine, where I work, and it's also my job here in church, where I love to be. So it's a bit of a background, bit of a history.
There's a whistle-stop tour in the life of
very
David
quick.
Williams. That's amazing. So we're going to come into the serving side of it and why you love to serve communities and serve that. But let's talk about Jesus for a minute.
Totally.
So what does the story of Jesus mean for you? And how does that practically then change you?
Totally. It's growing up in a Christian family is quite kind of subtle, because you grow up surrounded by Jesus. That whole kind of faith is in every aspect of your life. But you do hit a point. I think I was 5 or 6 years old. I wasn't old, where I knew I had to make a decision, and it had to be my choice, and it had to come from me to want to follow Jesus. And I just remember that as like a 5-year-old. So 5 or 6, still quite young. And I fast forward a few years. I can remember looking back on that, thinking, was it sincere at the time? Was it real at the time? But I had this real kind of conviction that, it absolutely was. Because what Jesus does, which is amazing, is he meets you where you're at, regardless of what point of the journey you're on and what you're facing and what you're going through. So at 5 years old, I asked Jesus to become, Lord of my life, said the sinner's prayer. At about 7, then I got baptised, I think mainly because my brother did. But that was cool. Jesus met me where I was at. And it was very kind of gentle and subtle. And Jesus kind of was always there kind of drawing me and was with me every step of the way. But I kind of hit a point at 16 where I can remember being in a meeting and just kind of calling out to God, saying, where are you, where are you, where are you? God, I want you to bless me, where are you, where are you? And I felt Jesus kind of just gently whisper to me, look, Dave, it's all right, I've got this, you just have to trust me, I've got this, your path is laid out, I've got it. And it was just that sense of security. And, I've always kind of grown up with a lot of kind of anxieties and fears and worries and self-doubt. But one thing I'm absolutely sure of is before Jesus, there was nothing. And post-Jesus, there's everything. Now, if you're not a believer and you don't follow Jesus, that's a really tough thing to grasp hold of. But it's like pre-Jesus, it is, like you described, it is death. There is no hope. We live this world, it's fleeting, it's going to end. And that's it. What's the meaning of life? What's the purpose? What happens when we get to the age we die? It's just, what is it? But when Jesus breaks in, all of a sudden you're just filled with hope. You're filled with a perspective that is beyond the world that we live in right now. You're filled with a real understanding of what life is, and life in its fullest. When Jesus said he came to give us life and life in its fullest. And the stark contrast is huge. Now, the journey may be quite subtle, and it might be quite gentle, and it might not be a light on, light off moment, but you get to points where you think, man, like, my life would literally be meaningless without Jesus in it. Because once you've got a glimpse of Jesus, and you've got a glimpse of his life-changing love, grace, a glimpse of his glory, there's no kind of turning back from that. There's something amazing, that miraculous happens. So for me, every aspect of my life, it's got to be for Jesus, because otherwise there's no purpose to it. There's no point to it. And it's that kind of gentleness, it's that love, it's that compassion, which then kind of infiltrated into my work and through service and caring and compassion. And you just see it in people, and it's like looking at people thinking, I just want you to see so much more. I want you to grasp hold of what Jesus has given me. Yeah. And it will just shed a light on these worries and these troubles and these questions that you have. Jesus will just shine a light on it, you know. So,
well, let's home in on that, though. Yeah. So, your story of coming to faith doesn't then necessarily mean for you to become a full-time pastor or full-time preacher, whatever. Yeah. There's something very innate in you that says, I want to care for people. Like, you have a deep desire that is innate to you to want to care. Specifically for the next generation as well, right?
Definitely.
Like, that's your process, and to get into their situation as well, right? Totally. And see the brokenness, but bring life into that. And so let's talk about that in itself. Then, what, like, on a day-to-day basis does your job look like?
Yeah, definitely. Well, my job's youth work, so that's working with children and young people, mainly young people aged 11 to 25. And we provide services around a whole range of things. So where I work in Torvine, we work with young people doing open access youth clubs. That's young people turning up and just having a laugh. A safe space where they can be themselves. It could be young people who need a bit of extra help. So it could be young parents. It could be young people from Gypsy Traveller backgrounds. It could be young people from the LGBTQ community. Young people who have these barriers that we just want to kind of break down and help them feel settled and safe. So really what we do is build programs in response to the needs of the young people, and we want them there because they want to be there. We don't want them there because they feel like they're forced to. So that's the kind of sort of provision we build, and it's what I love about it is I very much look after the team now that do it. I don't do as much youth work anymore, but as soon as you get to know people and start to relate with them, you realise there's a story there. There's things that have happened in their life that have shaped them, that have influenced them to be who they are. And we can write people off, and people can be judged and perceived in a certain way. But you realise that actually, if you just create an environment, and this is why I love youth work, it's all about creating a safe space that young people want to come to. Now, you think of that in the kind of context of church. If we create a safe space where people can just rock up and be themselves, and you can say to them, look, you don't have to do anything other than be you. Be real, be authentic, and I want to get to know you. And in getting to know you, I want you to get to know me, and I want to build a sincere relationship in which then we can do life together, and we can walk shoulder to shoulder, and we can figure this out. And as young people transition into adulthood, I just think it's a real privilege to be part of that journey. And, we see mad things in work. We've worked with kids that have sadly, taken their own life. We work with kids who, at the age of 14, have seen more than anybody should see in their entire life, We also see young people that are really kind of go-getters, really driven, really kind of have got a vision and they know where they're going. But just having that variety and that mix-up is wonderful. But yeah, it's building those relationships and being real with people is so important,
Yeah, for sure. That's so good. And then that translates into the fact then that you're also an elder at New Life Church, or we're sat outside New Life Church at the moment, in a place where a ton of youth work has happened.
Absolutely, yeah.
There's been countless water fights and stuff in this.
Fires in the corner just by there. Love it.
A whole lot of carnage happens in Fairwater. As we've heard, actually, probably on the mic, we've probably picked up some police sirens. Yeah. I'm pretty sure there's an ice cream van that I could hear as well. There's a whole host of things that happens in this community, then that translates into your story went from death to life. But then also the invitation is for that story to impact the lives of all of those around us. And so then that happens on a local environment as well.
Yeah, definitely.
So just talk to us about how that impact happens through the local church as
definitely. Well, here, like Heatwave is the youth club that's been in existence since about 98, 97. And it's always been just about trying to equip a generation of young people to kind of have that kind of passion and desire just to be world changers, do you know what I mean, in whatever field they walk in. But coming from that foundation of you're accepted, you're loved, you're cherished, you're precious. Yeah, things have happened. You may have made some choices that aren't necessarily great, but you also may have some circumstances that have shaped you. We still want to love you. And so what we try to create here is just creating a space where young people can come and exactly have that. So very practically, on a Friday night, we'd have 70 kids in here, not carnage, honestly, but lush. We'd have karaoke going on, they'd be doing some cooking, playing some pool, we might be out here on the fire making some s'mores and marshmallows. But the point is we wanted to just sort of give them an indication, or just be Jesus where we could to them and say, look, we're here because we love you and we want to serve you, and we want to show you that there is a way for you to feel accepted and for you to feel like you belong. And there's one story that just comes to mind in particular. We've got one lad here. Like you met him, he was 13 years old. You'd think he was like 17 or 18 with his language and what he'd been through and what he'd experienced. It was crazy. And we had one quite tough night here, and he lost his rag, and he flew out the front door, kicked the door open, smashed the window, and just went off in an absolute state, and it all kind of kicked off. So we went chasing after him and just said, look, let's talk about it. And he went, I didn't mean to do it. And we were up saying, yeah, we believe you. Come back in. We know you didn't mean to do it. You did it, and we accept that, and you were angry, but we know you didn't mean to do it. And the anger just kind of dripped out of him. And it was almost like saying to him, yeah, we forgive you, and the power of forgiveness. And I think, like, that's what brings you into life. Yeah. That's what takes you from death into life. It's realizing the amazing, miraculous forgiveness that Jesus clothes us in when we come to him and say, Jesus, we're sorry, we've got it wrong, we've done it our own way. We realize, actually, what you did on the cross 2,000 years ago was a done deal, and all we've got to do is step into that. We don't have to work anything up or drum anything up. We just got to say, Lord, you forgive us, we love you, we want to live your way. And that takes you from hopelessness, death, into the fullness of life and all that Jesus got on offer. So you know, it's just making a burrito, but actually what we're doing is saying to young people, look, we're listening to you, we want to stand by you, we want to do life with you. And if we can, through the way that we speak to these young people, just be a reflection of what Jesus is to us, and that's we love you, we accept you, and there's forgiveness, and don't worry about your past, don't worry about the decisions you've made, don't even worry about the future, God's got that, but there is a way to step out of the darkness and into the fullness of God's light.
Yeah. You know? That's so good. Thank you so much. And yeah, we just want to narrate the stories. Like sometimes a story of 2,000 years ago, a man dying and there being claims of him rising, that can seem distant and far removed from our West Cardiff life or East Cardiff life, as some of the other stories will be. And so we just want to narrate the story of death to life locally, from the west of the city through to the east of the city. Jesus is transforming lives. The gospel is good news because it brings hope to hopeless situations. It brings healing for brokenness.
Definitely.
And it brings fulfillment where there was hunger. And so just in that sense, we invite you to look further at this story. The story of Jesus from 2,000 years ago, as we come into Easter, was death to life for all people.
Absolutely.
And that is still the case. So join us on that journey. Join us for church on Sundays if you'd like. And we'd love to get to know you. Thank you so much, David.
Thank you for having me.
Cheers.